Jay Hamilton here at the annual ALEC meeting in Austin, Texas with Jennifer Huddleston, Senior Research Fellow at the Mercatus Center. You've been studying data privacy, which is in the news, which is a concern of everybody. Tell me what you've been finding out.
Thank you for having me here today, Jay. What's been really interesting is we've really seen a conversation pick up in the last couple of years with the GDPR going into effect, with a lot of headlines, and now with California moving on the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA. What's really kind of concerning about this is that we could see a 50-state patchwork of laws that could really impact the future of innovation and the internet and a lot of commerce, both online and off.
So give me an example of what's happening now and how it's impacting the regular citizen.
So there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not there will be a federal data privacy law. Currently, the FTC uses its consumer welfare enforcement and its Section 5 authority to enforce things. So you may have seen recently there was a $5 billion settlement against Facebook regarding the Cambridge Analytica and violations of a prior consent decree that they had been under. So on a federal level, that's been a lot of the conversation of what if anything, additional authority is needed. On a state level...
This is Facebook selling its data on people's privacy to the analytical company, correct? There was an arrangement where Cambridge...
So this no.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Clarify.
So this had to do with Facebook was under a consent decree regarding behaviors about what they had and hadn't notified consumers about.
Right.
Some potential misleading concerns, and as a result of an investigation that was largely spurred by some of the Cambridge Analytica news, the FTC found that they had violated the prior consent decree. And so there is now a new order that involved the largest data privacy fine in FTC history, as well as a number of new requirements on that company specifically.
So this is all about when you're engaged with a social media channel or a business, and they put cookies and they find out data on you, what they can and can't do with that data, what you've consented for them to do with that.
So the consent is really important here in terms of what we really need to take a step back and do is look at how many different choices consumers make. Because we all have a really wide range of privacy preferences. Some people want to be sure that they keep everything as private as possible. They choose not to engage on social media. They're careful about what photos they let friends take and things like that. Other people are more than happy to give some information about themselves, say via survey in exchange for some kind of discount or whatever. Think about your grocery store loyalty cards. And
Right.
This is actually a really good example. Because when California's law was initially passed, there wasn't a carve out for grocery store loyalty programs. So if you go to the Giant or the Harris Teeter or whatever your local grocery store is, a lot of times you have a card that gets you certain discounts. Well, because of the way the California law was initially drafted, that was going to be considered illegal. And I think most of us understand that there's some trade-off involved with, say, signing up for a store's email list or giving certain information to a store, but we make a pragmatic choice for what's best for us as a consumer, and we may choose different companies based on what they do with that data, or we may choose different security options as a result.
And so your position is choice.
Exactly.
And explaining at the very beginning of whatever engagement's happening, the choices you have on exposing your data or not.
Consumers need to make educated decisions that work best for them, and they need to make sure that they're informing themselves about what they're doing, and sometimes even maybe take a step back and think a little bit before just falling on the latest fad or whatever it is. But most consumers are pragmatic, and we've seen that they take many steps to protect themselves and their information, and that they use different platforms and different brick and mortar stores different ways. So the great thing about the American approach that wasn't the precautionary regulatory approach that we saw in Europe even before the GDPR is that it has given consumers a wider range of choices, and it's also allowed innovators to come up with new ideas and new ways of solving consumer or new ways of giving consumers benefits and solutions that they want.
This is almost having the private sector, in a sense, put together its own set of regulations, its own guidelines, and not the government dictating that.
So every company has, chosen their own solutions when it comes to how they use data. But what we are also seeing, of course, is certain common practices emerge as they do in any industry. And I think the fact that a lot of times it gets forgotten that there are already enforcement mechanisms. There already are some carve-outs for that most sensitive data that is a lot of times what people are actually concerned about. So there are regulations regarding financial data, healthcare data, children's online privacy that really target perhaps those areas that there is a greater risk of harm. And at the end of the day, that's really what we should be focusing on is what is the harm we're trying to prevent? And if we aren't seeing a clear reason that the government needs to step in and prevent a harm, then allowing consumers to make those choices that are best for them and their family.
I'm seeing more and more pop-ups when I visit sites asking if they can put cookies on. And is that part of all this? How may the consumer be impacted now and in the future as far as being able to make a choice in their privacy
So there are a couple of things there. One is that in a lot of cases that really took off after the GDPR went into effect in Europe. That was one way that a lot of companies were complying with the law. The other element there also is that when it's a pop-up like that, sometimes consumers just get tired of it and they aren't necessarily making that informed choice because every website you go to, you have to click through and click through and click through. So sometimes these solutions that seem clean and easy and simple actually aren't necessarily doing what the policymakers think that they will or are not actually impacting consumers in a way where consumers are making more informed choices.
This is a fast-moving area that you're in, a lot of technology involved. As you continue your research in data privacy, what do you see in your crystal ball? What do you see happening? What do you hope happens?
So I think it's important to look at the successes of the American approach so far, how this really has allowed America to be a leader in innovation, to take a step back from the headlines and not let just because you read about something in the newspaper, it make you think that there's perhaps a greater harm than there really is. And then to focus on what good things have happened in this space and how can we continue those and tweaking on the margins when there might be a clear definition of harm that needs to be remedied.
Well, good. We'll keep following your research. Jennifer Huddleston at the Mercator Center. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.